罗嘎达瓜拉瓜拉们的水古金啊Wagi Shyac，大家好，欢迎收看《Ita 看世界》，一起看世界，我是Wagi。
大家好，我是拉瑙。Ita 不仅要带大家一起 see the world， 更要用我们的方式说世界的故事。
1840年，纽西兰毛利族代表与英国王室签订的怀唐伊条约，是保障并捍卫毛利族主权的重要基础，也确立了纽西兰政府针对毛利人事务的治理应该要基于伙伴原则，保障毛利族人的参与。不过，近日纽西兰国会进行审议一部极具争议的法案，由联合政府的行动党领袖 David Seymour 提出，主要的目的在要求重新定义怀唐伊条约的诠释原则。然而，这对毛利人来说是限缩了既有的权利，也撼动了政府与原住民族之间的关系。尽管支持该法案的势力薄弱，但这场争议无疑是加剧了纽西兰毛利人与非原民的紧张关系。
撕毁手中的法案，来自毛利党纽西兰最年轻的国会议员哈纳拉皮奇麦皮 Clark 带领跳哈卡，表达对新法案的强烈反对。11月中旬，纽西兰国会审议由行动党提出的条约原则法案，该法案试图重新诠释怀唐伊条约。毛利人担心这将进一步限缩他们的权益。
Shame on you, David Seymour. Shame on you for what you're trying to do to this nation in introducing this treaty principles bill.
The division that you are seeing was not caused by this bill. It's been built up over decades during which New Zealanders have come to regard themselves as based on ancestry or one side of a partnership instead of New Zealanders. And what's worse, successive governments have encouraged that division. The division is there whether this bill is here to reveal it or not, and we cannot afford to ignore it any longer.
1840年，由英国王室和超过500位毛利领袖签订的怀唐伊条约，主要有3条，依序为主权、土地资源和公民权。然而，当时签订的条约内容分为英语和毛利语版本，导致双方对于条约内容的解读经常发生争议。其中最大的争议在于，毛利人从未放弃自己的主权，让渡的只是治理权。后来经过族人长期奋斗与抗争，才在1975年通过怀唐伊条约法案，并据以成立怀唐伊法庭，重新检视条约的翻译落差与权利剥夺，让毛利人能透过诉讼方式取回部分权利。
大英帝国的理解是，他们就并吞了在纽西兰上生活的这些毛利的这些部落社群。可是毛利人的酋长以及他们的领袖的理解是，英国人跟他们是一个伙伴关系，各自享有各自的权利，然后共同的来治理这样子的一个国家。
而行动党提出的新法案却针对条约3项原则做出更狭隘的定义，包括否认毛利人与官方的伙伴关系，取消为毛利人设立的独立医疗机构，以及公家机关中的毛利保障名额等，打着法律面前人人平等的名号，试图废除他人眼中毛利人所拥有的特权。
Everyone in New Zealand has the same rights now. What Maori are seeking is redress for government actions of the past. We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for acknowledgement of the expropriation of land, the military intervention, the illegal confiscations, all of those things that happened in the 19th century into the 20th century.
去年10月，卢克森领导的联合政府上任后，就提出多项削弱毛利人权益的政策，并在短短1年不到的时间，迫使毛利人发起一波波大规模抗议。如今，为了抵制这项法案，数万人在11月19日这天走上街头，最后集结在首都威灵顿的国会大厦前示威抗议。
Māori have been here for a long time, and I guess a lot of the actions coming out of Parliament lately haven't been suffice for Māori, I guess. And part of today is reminding the relationship between Māori and Crown, founding document, and tangata whenua tātou. So that's the main thing for us, is reminding those things, and so when the decisions are made, we're considered heavily.
Like for me, it's what's the point? We've already got Te Tiriti o Waitangi in place. Like, why are we doing this? Why are we bringing a bill in when there is already a foundational document in there?
抗议民众高举象征毛利主权的旗帜，喊着 "Whetu te tiriti" 的口号，要求政府尊重条约的历史与精神。国会议员和毛利领袖也一一站出来喊话。
We will never ever have to decide who can mess with our rights and our sovereignty as an Indigenous people here in Aotearoa. We are the kingmakers, we are the sovereign people of this land, and the world is watching us here. Not because of the system, not because of the rules, but because we haka, and because we have our reo, and because we have our culture.
在集会当中，民众向国会议员提交一份超过20万个签名的请愿书，呼吁终止这项争议法案。尽管该法案已在国会一读通过，但纽西兰总理卢克森表示不会继续支持该法案。
Treaty issues are complex. They've been negotiated, debated, discussed over 184 years. It's simplistic to assume that you can, through the stroke of a pen, resolve all of that. As you know, our position as a National Party is unchanged. We won't be supporting the bill beyond second reading, and therefore it won't become law.
目前法案已交由特别委员会审查，民众可在期限内提交意见书，预计明年上半年会有更新进展。不可否认的是，这场争议无疑已伤害了毛利人与官方的关系，也加剧纽西兰社会原住民族与非原民的紧张关系。国家人权博物馆正在进行的纽西兰原住民族历史正义银幕叙事特展，展览主题就在呼应尊重怀唐伊条约的行动。接下来的 Ita Specials 主题特写。节目团队特别专访到参与本次特展的毛利族导演以及共同策展人，一起来探讨怀唐伊条约的历史争议。From September 24, 2024 to March 23, 2025, the National Human Rights Museum hosts the special exhibition Whetu te Maori, New Zealand Maori Historical Justice on Screen. And the special exhibition is co-organized by the New Zealand Commerce and Industry Office, and the curators are Dr. Lin Hao Li and Dr. Guo Heiyi from Taiwan Society for Pacific Studies. And the exhibition also invited Kathryn Graham from New Zealand as the film curator. Through the power of visual narrative, the life situation of Maori people in the history is truly presented, and how they protect their justice value and dignity. It is hoped that the New Zealand experiences can be used as a reference for Taiwan to further promote transitional justice of Indigenous peoples. And through Ita Specials, let's find out what stories and messages this exhibition would like to tell us. And first, we are very honored to welcome today's distinguished guest, the co-director of FINA, Paula Whetu-Jones. Welcome.
Ko maunga haumi te maunga, ko waipawa te awa, ko takitimi te marae, ko takitimi te waka, ko Paula Whetu-Jones tōku ingoa. I am the co-writer and co-director of FINA, and I've been brought here to represent the film for the exhibition.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And also the film curator, Kathryn Graham. Welcome.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ko Tainui te waka, ko Maunga Tautari te maunga, ko Waikato te awa, ko Ngāti Koroki Kahukura te iwi, ko Kataraina Kiriyama ahau. I am here visiting Taiwan as I was the co-curator of the exhibition that we're going to talk about. Kia ora.
As the Austronesian family, the Maori people of Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the indigenous peoples of Taiwan have shared similar histories and experiences. And both our two countries have been working towards reconciliation with mainstream society through transitional justice for many years. As the film curator, Ms. Graham, could you please briefly introduce the theme of the exhibition, and what message do you want to convey through this exhibition?
Well, the exhibition's name is Whetu te Maori, which means, which is very much aligned with the current political protest movement that's going on in New Zealand called Whetu Te Tiriti, which is about protecting the rights of the Treaty of Waitangi. And Whetu Te Māori relates to protecting the status and the mana of Māori in relationship to Aotearoa. And the exhibition is very much about how the Te Tiriti of Waitangi and has been responded to by Māori. So that's why Dr. Lynn and myself chose the films. Well, actually, Dr. Lynn selected the films that are being exhibited, but the overriding kind of theme of it is the relationship of Māori to the Treaty of Waitangi.
And what message do you want to convey through this special exhibition?
Well, I guess the message is that even though we have this treaty, that it hasn't been honoured by the treaty partner, and that what we've always tried to do is to keep the Crown and the government accountable to what they agreed to in that document. So there were two versions of the document, of the treaty. One is the English version, the other is the Māori version. And in the Māori version, the way that the English words were translated was in a manner that people of that time would understand and would be happy to sign that document. And so I guess the exhibition itself is very much about the response to that document, and the theme is that if you have a treaty and there is discussion around that treaty, that is a discussion in partnership, not one part of the partnership telling the other part of the partnership what they should be doing. So our people have always believed that we retain more than we have given away with that document.
As we know that 5 films will be screened during the exhibition, Whina was the first film to be screened in this special exhibition on September 24th. And Whina tells the story of Whina Cooper, one of the most significant Maori social activists of the 1970s in New Zealand. And she led the 1975 Maori Land March, breaking gender barriers, defending Maori rights, and fighting for land. As the co-director, Ms. Jones, could you please tell us more about this story?
Yeah, Whina was born in 1895, and she was born from a chiefly whānau family, and she always knew her role within her family, her hapu, her iwi, and as a leader, I guess. And she broke down gender barriers, especially when the colonisers and the missionaries came, who preferred to deal with men because of their patriarchal society. And Māori women they inherited land and they had status. Only 13 Māori women signed the Treaty of Waitangi. And yeah, she was told that she couldn't do things, and she did things anyway. Like there was so much more in the film that we left out. Like she was head of the meat board up north. She was a sharpshooter, Pangaru sharpshooter. She was rugby club. She was head of the rugby union up north. There were so many things that she did that were in a traditionally male-dominated space, but she did it, and she did it well. She was very autocratic. And a lot of people didn't like that, but she knew that the treaty was a partnership, and she was making sure that those roles were adhered to, I guess, even though she was coming up against a whole lot of backlash, especially from men. Yeah. And the Land March was the start of something a lot bigger, with the Treaty of Waitangi Act happened at the same time.
The Waitangi Tribunal was a way of giving our people a method to bring the government to account around land grievances and land loss.
Yes.
And so the tribunal, which still operates today, it has a certain amount of power, but it's not wholly. It's tricky, and it takes a long time, and you have to takes a lot of resources from our people, and it's pretty tough. But finally, the Crown is being held accountable for its actions.
Yeah.
And
the land march was it made Māori visible, and it made New Zealand understand or look at or see the racists.
And Māori in the 70s, particularly, starting in the 60s, but in the 70s, there was a lot of political activism. And Dame Whina was part of that, but she also wanted to do it her way.
Yeah.
So this was what she came up with.
So it put Māori in everybody's lounges and everybody's living rooms, and our grievances and the land losses and the alienation and the issues that were forefront for Māori at the time, because a lot of people did think that everything was okay.
Yeah.
And does Whina's life story also reflects the Māori women's empowerment movement?
We have a lot of strong Māori women leaders.
There's a tradition of, historically there's a strong tradition of wahine Māori being very standing and, taking a stand. And I think that the patriarchy, in terms of a Western construct, of course there is the whole, there will always be that physical difference between men and women, but Māori men and women were far more equal or far more part of the holistic way of looking at everything rather than a gender-based. But we don't even differentiate in Māori language in terms of male or females. So it's kind of interesting.
And a lot of Māori women leaders were left out of the narrative. Like in the suffragette movement, there were very strong Māori women who were a part of that, getting the votes for women. And Māori women owned land, but they weren't allowed that.
They weren't allowed to vote because it was only white men in the parliamentary system.
White men that owned land. And
so a lot of things that Māori do, we've kind of done alongside. Like when the parliament was first formed, then the Kingitanga movement had their own we had our own parliament or own kind of justice. It's just we've sort of created things that run alongside of what's happening in the mainstream, in the sort of in the Western system.
And in this exhibition, we found that there is a documentary which is called The Maoli Land March, which is closely related to Whina. So, Ms. Graham, from the curator's perspective, what's the point of view presented by each of these two films?
Well, I suppose one is a dramatised version of Dame Whina's life, and so it's about her when she was a young girl, when she was in her middle years, and then as an old lady. So there's dramatic license taken with that story, and it is one particular story of of the many different versions that you could make because it's scripted. So it's not, while it's based on fact, it's not necessarily totally true, there's dramatic license. But in Te Matakiti or Aotearoa, that is that was made by a documentary team that was embedded into the hikoi. Everything in that is documentary, and it was the very first documentary that was played on the brand new TV2, whenever it was, in 1978, I think. Yeah, so it is actually what happened and what went on. And Dame Whina is in it.
And speaking of fighting for land, the Bastion Point's occupation was one of the most important protests in the struggle for Māori land rights in New Zealand. Ms. Graham, could you please introduce more detail about the documentary Bastion Point's Day 507 to the audience?
So Bastion Point Day 507 is a documentary film made by one of our most famous Māori filmmakers, Mira Tamita. It basically takes place on the day leading up to and the day that 600 police were sent out by the government of the time to remove the protesters from their own land. The protest actually was from Ngāti Whātua ki Ōrākei. They were there because they had always maintained that the land had never gone out of their ownership, and they had heard that there was going to be a residential development built there for really flash houses, and probably not for Māori. They were going, and so the protest was that they would occupy the land and until the government gave the land back. So what happened was they were forcibly removed after 507 days of occupation. They finally, through the Waitangi Tribunal, got the land back, which they now have back. So this was another absolute landmark protest actions that ordinary Māori took to hold the Crown accountable and get our land back, which they did. So,
and just like Taiwan indigenous peoples, Māori people also suffered discrimination and unequal treatment due to colonization, and which also led to the rapid loss of the land, language, and culture. And in the documentary No Māori Allowed, revisits how Māori suffered racial segregation and discrimination in their daily lives from 1920s to the 1960s. Could you talk about the impacts of this No Māori Allowed regulations on the Māori people based on their life experience?
The thing was, it was really it was quite localized. So what the doco tells us about is the experience of local people in a very small town. So even though this is a small semi-rural town, it's only an hour out of Auckland. It's a place called Pukekohe, and there's another place near it called Tuakau, which these were towns that were founded on land that was confiscated by the government after what called the Māori Land Wars. And there was 1.3 million acres taken, or 1.7, sorry, I'd have to, acres taken from the Waikato people, and this was part of that parcel of land that was taken at that time. And so it's a very wealthy little town. It's a hub for market gardening and agriculture, and so Māori were used as labour force on their own lands, basically, that they've been removed from, which I think is a similar story probably to the Taiwanese people, Indigenous people. And so what was built up there was like the subclass of people who were Māori. And we weren't allowed into the hospital. We weren't allowed to be treated in the hospital. We weren't provided with housing in those towns. And you weren't allowed to even walk on the same side of the road as non-Māori. So No Māori Allowed actually really only came to the attention once the book was written, of the sort of the attention of the wider community and the wider population of New Zealand is when a book was written by an American academic called No Māori Allowed. And so finally someone from outside had come in and written a story about what had happened, which was essentially apartheid being practiced in New Zealand, in this town. And it wasn't uncommon. There were other towns as well, but this is just the one that was written about. And the local people, there's so much trauma that they had never really faced it themselves. And so I went to a few of the meetings when they were talking about it, and you could just feel that in the room, that this was the first opportunity that their story had been allowed to be told. So it's an extraordinary, and when it was played, it was because it was first played on television New Zealand. When it was played, there was a lot of conversations that happened, and a lot of realisation that actually this is real, this really happened. These people were totally segregated against, and people's stories were finally heard. So it was kind of the start of a healing process and reconciliation process. Yeah, so it's a very powerful documentary.
And I wonder, is that only happened in a specific area, or is national?
No,
it
would have been national.
Yeah.
Like from my own personal experience, my father is Māori and my mother is Pākehā. And there's lots of stories about, you know, trying to get housing, rentals. And when my mother turned up, they would give it to her, and then when my dad turned up, they would take it away because he's Māori. And it's quite blatant. But I think, you know, when you're talking about the impacts, it's a shame. It's a shame that you're not good enough, and that gets passed down and passed down. So and they don't, you know, I remember
Do you mean
watching
the shame of it?
Yeah, the shame of this being put onto you, you know, your parents having to go through that, and then the shame is it's a generational trauma, and it's just not ever been good enough for. And when I watched that doco, my heart broke because you could see that they wanted their story told, but they didn't want their story told because it opened everything up, and it forced people. But it's also when you're mokopuna and your children are hearing these stories about how they were treated, and you know we're trying to grow our young people up to be strong and capable, and this is how their nannies were treated, and it's hard to.
Well, you know, many of our children anyway now are of the generation that came through our language learning nests, koanga reo, that have where the language is being reclaimed. And I mean, two of my three children are relatively fluent te reo Māori speakers. Now, is it one generation to lose a language and 3 generations to get it back?
Just like in Taiwan, there's like half of population now live in the urban area, so we also have the same issues.
Yeah, it's the same thing.
Yeah. As we know that in the history, although the Māori people tried to assert their sovereignty by signing the Declaration of Independence and the Treaty of Waitangi, their sovereignty was lost due to different translations between English and te reo Māori. And it made us wonder what really happened in 1840. Ms. Graham, could you share more about the docudrama Waitangi, what really happened?
So basically what it tells the story, it sort of sends a modern reporter back to the day, and then recreates, that voice recreates and interviews people that were there on the day. And so what it does is it shows that it was all done in this big rush, and that the translating of this English document, the treaty, was done overnight and became te tiriti. And so we never ceded our sovereignty. There was a confusion around the meaning of several of the words, which is particularly important, and that's where a lot of the misunderstanding has come from. And so Māori absolutely believe that we did not cede sovereignty, and the Crown has always maintained that we did. So there's this, it's this missing, it's just missing, and it's lost in translation. Yeah, so because at that time there would be no reason to sign something like that would, because we were still the majority population. It was more, I think, probably when you hear the dialogue and you read about it, it was probably just as much about the verbal story and the oral stories that were being told as the document itself. Because when you think that we're an oral people, and so there was a lot of discussion on the day around the different parts of it as well, so which you can't really capture because that's the Western legal system, is you have a document and everybody signs it and then we all agree on it, you know. So at the moment what's happening in Aotearoa is there's proposed litigation going on about it from our new, one of our new coalition government partners, and the Prime Minister and his party has said that they're not going to ratify it, that they're just more or less going through the motions, but it's caused a huge amount of trauma, and Māori people are very upset about what's being proposed to happen. So we see this as a living document.
The three Ps that Māori sort of look at with the Treaty of Waitangi is participation, that we are participating in all of decisions, protection, that the Crown protects us, and that's against outside influences as well. Participation, protection, and partnership, and that we are equal partners. And the interesting thing, though, is back in the day, they thought we were all going to die. They were going to die out. But and in 1874, we were down to about 40,000 Māori in New Zealand. But
because
it's
of disease and other, you know.
But it has backfired because we're up to 1 million now. Having more kids, but it's also people identifying as being Māori and keeping the culture alive.
And this year, Taiwan and New Zealand jointly launched the special exhibition. And what is your thoughts or prospects of this collaboration experience?
Well, it's great. It's fantastic. It actually, a lot of Māori won't know about the relationship and the similarities between the Indigenous Taiwanese and ourselves. So I think that that it's a fantastic opportunity both for both Taiwanese to learn about Māori and Māori to learn about Indigenous Taiwanese, yeah.
And Ms. Jones and Ms. Graham, what inspirations do you hope to bring to Taiwanese society by telling the stories of Māori people? And why is this so important to you?
It's important for us to tell our stories because we're the only ones that can in the way that we do. And it's been such a long time we haven't been able to tell our stories. And I think also as women, it's important for young women in Taiwan to see what's possible. I mean, you know, if we can do it, then there's no reason, and we're quite happy to support anybody that wants to tell their own stories.
Well, I suppose Indigenous peoples in our struggle all around the world are at different stages, and Māori are at a particular stage. And what I think this exhibition brings is just a reflection of where we're at. And for other Indigenous people, so for local Indigenous people here, they'll be able to look at the stories that are being told and hopefully get inspired, or they'll want to get in touch with Māori and see and come up with some collaborations and partnerships, and look at ways that we can help each other tell each other's stories. So I think that it'll be, hopefully a lot of people will go and see it, especially Indigenous Taiwanese.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Kia ora.
Thank you for having us.
So let's take a break. For more stories from Ita See the World, please stay tuned.
庆祝中华民国台湾与马绍尔群岛共和国建交26周年纪念，马绍尔群岛驻台大使馆与原民会合作举行为期1个月的文化艺术交流展。下一段回来，Ita Beyond一起来关注。欢迎回到Ita看世界。邹族猎人协会最新出版新书，透过邹族猎人的视角，分享狩猎文化的历史脉络和传统生态知识。今天的Ita Beyond首先一起来关注这则报道，接下来把时间交给英语主播Lana。
It's December 10th. You're watching Ita Beyond. I'm Lana. The Zou Hunters Association recently published Zou Hunting Grounds, Surveys and Narratives. The final stop of the book tour was at Wagi Shyac, the home of the Zou people. The event was attended by academics as well as the 20 hunters who participated in the book's writing, sharing their perspectives on Zou hunting culture.
Hunters of the Zou people are presented with the new book, Zou Hunting Grounds, Surveys and Narratives, published by the Zou Hunters Association. The book includes the stories of 20 hunters as well as surveys of 13 Zou hunting trails, hoping not only to preserve the practices of Zou hunting, but also to present the emotional bond between the hunters and their land.
从国小就跟着爸爸去狩猎，李家部分的刚好是我带路的，所以整个那边的地形还有猎场我都很清楚，所以透过这一次发表， 让我们更深入的了解，然后也顺便利用这个时候来做一个那个记录啦，让我们的下一代的猎人可以知道我们以前老猎人的路径。
猎人讲故事他其实他讲故事，他不只是在讲自己的故事，他会讲很多猎场的东西，会讲狩猎很多的东西。他整个我们当初只是想说有一个猎场地图，这个地图需要有故事，这个故事是谁创造出来的，谁行动出来的，就是猎人。所以他们从他们的生命史、狩猎的过程，就把这样的东西我觉得是端在这本书里面。
The book's cover art contrasts the majesty of the Zou land god with the insignificance of a single human, symbolizing the relationship between the mountains and humankind and reminding indigenous peoples to respect the spirits of the mountains. The book's release was accompanied by a tour with the final stop in Alishan, the home of the Zou people. They hope that their work, as the first book to explore hunting culture from indigenous viewpoints, can create a deeper understanding of the connection between indigenous hunting and sustainable and balanced land use.
实际上，我们走入山林我们的猎人本身他就是很崇敬山林，崇敬土地，然后很尊重人。那一向我们猎人的想法就是说，我进入这个山，我不能要求太多。那这些山林的一些产物啊，或者是动物啊，这些有形无形的东西，都是由这个土地神他去圈养眷顾的。
之所以办这么多场的新书发表，最主要是我们希望借着这本书，让所有的大众都认识说，狩猎原住民的狩猎不是只有猎杀动物。而且它其实里面蕴含的很多的一些故事。
The Zou Hunters Association said that in the future, it may publish even more detailed and comprehensive books to provide a thorough record of the Zou hunting culture. The association will continue to work to preserve the hunting culture and memories of the ancestors.
Taiwan County governments undergoes Dawu publication plan, going deep into local communities for interviews, writing the life stories of Dawu people taking roots, coexisting, and thriving with the village, so more people can understand and cherish this land, and further promote local tourism and industry development.
Youth from Dawu Township chant Paiwan community ballads as opening for the new book launch. This is organized by Taiwan County government as part of the Dawu publication plan, conducting deep local interviews, writing about Dawu people taking roots, coexisting and thriving and working hard in life.
其实文化处一直在致力，就是把地方的一些文史收集起来，然后当然不可能完全就把它记录下来。我们也希望说这本书的出版可以让更多人就是说认识大武，愿意来大武。
Starting from the South Link Highway, the book covers various themes such as Dawu's elegance, the history of moving to Dawu, and the land nurtured the taste of Dawu, exploring Dawu, personal stories and memories of objects, encompassing the highway economy, migration and settlement, local industries, humanity, and tourist spots, taking readers on a journey deep into the story of Dawu, while preserving the local culture and customs of Dawu.
我相信应该也有很多人会因为这本书，然后在经过大武的时候，把这个书拿开来，像说地图一样，去走访，去看看我们这些所谓书上所写的一些点啊，或者是风景啊，彻彻底底去做一个深层的走入。
那它是一个族群融合的一个环境。我是因为有参与这个，也希望说这本书能再继续带领着我们大武的文化继续走下去。
Dawu Township, near where the mountain meets the sea, has experienced changes over time, with people coming and going, village shifting and merging, an industry rising and falling, which are all recorded in the book. This is not just a book with cultural and historical depth, but also a unique identifier connecting Dawu. It is hoped that through the book, the public can get to know this place and feel the resilience and passion of Dawu people.
The Republic of the Marshall Islands, which has diplomatic ties with Taiwan, is celebrating the 26th anniversary of our diplomatic relationship. On November 20th, they kicked off a month-long cultural and arts exhibition in Taipei. Dressed in ocean-inspired outfits, a dance troupe from the Marshall Islands performed traditional music and dances, showcasing the beauty of Austronesian cultures to celebrate 26 years of diplomatic ties between Taiwan and the Marshall Islands. Highlighting the friendship between the two countries, on November 20th, the Embassy of the Republic of the Marshall Islands and the Council of Indigenous Peoples kicked off a month-long cultural and arts exhibition at Taipei's Dimensions Art Center, aiming to strengthen ties and promote cultural exchange.
也希望用艺术这样的一个呈现两国在文化上的相似性，从创作中的绘画，甚至是摄影，还有陶艺。 借此来传达台湾跟马绍尔相似性的南岛传统智慧跟海洋文化，
延续南岛艺术这个连结之外，也是透过艺术的创作去做交流，然后也看到其实在台湾岛链里面、太平洋岛链里面，原住民艺术以及当代艺术的一个交流和对话这样。
Since establishing diplomatic ties in 1998, Taiwan and the Marshall Islands have built a range of collaborative programs highlighting their close bond.
Taiwan has and continues to contribute tremendously to the RMI in numerous fields such as education, health, women empowerment, infrastructure, food security, just to name a few. And as we commemorate this day in our two countries' history, I wish to take this opportunity to renew our assurances and our utmost gratitude to Taiwan for its invaluable support and assistance towards the development and growth of the Marshall Islands.
With the theme Island as Vessel, Ocean as Path, a journey and dialogue of Austronesian culture, this exhibition not only reaffirms Taiwan's role as the heart of Austronesian cultures, but also highlights its importance as a vital link in global connections. Taiwan has many cute road and traffic signs reminding drivers to watch out for wild animals. And recently, on County Road 193 in Guangfu, Hualien, an adorable sign has appeared with the image of 3 turtles crossing the road, and the words "Please drive like turtles," hoping to reduce the number of roadkill turtles.
On County Road 193 in the Garudongan village, a special sign was recently put up featuring 3 turtles marked, "Please drive like turtles." The cute signs attract the attention of passers-by. Local residents mentioned that this road section often sees roadkill endemic turtles. Hence, the signs were put up with subsidy from the Forestry Bureau.
那一个区段旁边有那个水源，然后那边有那个采光龟。对啊，之前很多尸体，它会过去，然后它经过路那个车子给。
Secretary General Dong Yi mentioned that there are 3 types of endemic turtles in the local area, among which the yellow pond turtle is a Class 1 protected species, and their habitat is right by the road. They were often crushed by passing vehicles, hence the idea to establish these signs to remind road users.
不管是不是保育类啦，真的是在乡间小路开车都不用那么快，因为这3只其实就是。 比较社区标的性的，像斑龟是很多啦，那柴棺还有食蛇龟，对，所以其实弄这3只也是希望大家就是多多礼让这些保育类的物种这样子。
Secretary General Dong Yi reminds road users to slow down when passing through County Road 193 to avoid hitting and crushing wild animals and give them a safe living environment.
That's all for today. Join us next week for more news coverage. 接下来国际上还有哪些焦点新闻？Ita News Flash 快新闻带您一起来扫描。
庄严
年的教堂内却布满着可爱的黄色小鸭，趣味十足。这座位于西班牙马德里的橡皮鸭教堂巴特加诺正举行一场拨感压力的弥撒，现场充满嘎嘎声响，一对新人更在众人见证下交换橡皮鸭戒指，现场气氛幽默却温馨。橡皮鸭教堂于2012年创立，创办人 Lopburi 希望透过橡皮鸭平凡微小的象征，鼓励人们欣赏生活中的小确幸，传递轻松与包容的讯息。如今，橡皮鸭教堂俨然成为马德里的另类文化地标。尽管为了应付到访人潮，每周日举行的主日弥撒已增为3场，人常因场地限制，让许多慕名而来却不得其门而入的民众感到遗憾。洛梨、山竹与长豆摆满桌，上百只活蹦乱跳的猕猴在泰国华夫里市的年度猴子盛宴节中享受把费大餐。猕猴在当地被视为幸运的象征，这项已有36年历史的节庆，展现了人类与野生动物共存的努力，也作为吸引游客观光的亮点。然而，满城的猕猴却越来越影响在地商家与居民的日常生活。为解决猴螨文化问题，泰国政府今年推动猴群控制计划，透过捕捉及绝育来减少猴群数量，并将猕猴转移至大型庇护所安置。对此，部分动保组织强调，尽管节育是可行的，但把猴群关入笼中喂养的方式仍需谨慎对待。在智利圣文森特，一群被称为种子守护者的农民正努力收集、交换并种植数百种传统种子，重现因工业化农业而被遗忘的番茄、玉米及其他蔬菜品种。这项行动延续了该地原住民马普切人的农业传统，不仅保存了适应当地环境的农作物，还传承了与种植相关的古老智慧，对生物多样性和文化传统的维持至关重要。因应气候变迁加剧，传统种子的多样性成为解决农业挑战的重要资源。这些传统种子不仅提供了适应不同环境的基因，有助于培育出能应对极端气候的新品种，也吸引高级餐厅业者的关注，带来潜在的市场经济价值。种子守护行动将有助于推动粮食多样性，为粮食安全奠定基石，让传统与创新在现代农业中找到平衡。
每年的12月10日是联合国大会订定的世界人权日，除了用来纪念联合国在1948年12月10日通过了世界人权宣言之外，也成为重申并阐明宣言所揭示各项人权精神的重要时刻。
在1992年世界人权日当天，联合国大会达成了一项重大决议，将原住民族定位为一个新伙伴，强调政府、国际社会在与原住民族发展伙伴关系时，必须公平地建立在互相尊重与了解的基础上。节目最后，让我们再次回顾毛利人在今年11月中旬发起的尊重怀唐伊条约行动。我是Wagi，
我是Lana，感谢您的收看，下周再会。